After marriage, I discovered my wife was secretly meeting and texting her ex. I gathered proof in silence, then revealed everything before her family, turning one ordinary dinner into the night her double life collapsed. Before continue, please like this video and subscribe to my channel, thank you. My name is Ryan Mitchell. I'm 30 years old, and a year ago, I thought I had it all. A stable job I didn't hate, a home I could be proud of, and a woman I believed would be by my side forever. Emily. She was everything I thought I wanted, warm, beautiful, and with this effortless charm that made people instantly like her. We had been together for almost 3 years before we decided to get married. Our wedding was the kind of day people write about in diaries, all golden light, clinking glasses, and whispered promises. She looked like she had stepped out of a dream when she walked toward me down the aisle, and in that moment I remember thinking, this is it. This is the life I've been working for. Those first weeks after the wedding felt like living in a movie. We'd wake up tangled together in the mornings, have breakfast before work, send each other small texts through the day about silly little things. Evenings were spent cooking together, talking about our plans for the future, the house we might buy, the trips we wanted to take. From the outside, we were that couple everyone points to as relationship goals. Friends would tell me I was lucky. My parents adored her. And I believed in her. I believed in us. I thought we had a kind of love that could weather anything. But the thing about perfect pictures is, sometimes they're just that, pictures. And pictures can hide cracks you don't notice until it's too late. There was something there, buried beneath all the smiles and the routines. Something I couldn't see yet. Looking back, I think I felt it before I knew it. A faint unease, like a shadow in a well-lit room. You tell yourself it's nothing. You ignore it. You keep smiling because you're sure the person you love could never hurt you like that. But the truth? The truth was already on its way to the surface. And when it finally showed itself, it wouldn't just break my heart, it would change the way I looked at trust forever. It started small, so small that at first, I brushed it off without a second thought. Emily had always been glued to her phone more than I was, scrolling through social media, texting friends, watching videos. So when she began holding it a little closer to her face, or tilting the screen away from me, I figured she just wanted privacy. We all do that sometimes, right? But then, her phone started buzzing late at night. Once or twice, it could have been anyone. But when it kept happening, and she'd quietly slip out of bed to check something, my chest would tighten in ways I couldn't explain. She'd come back a few minutes later, pretending nothing happened, curling back up next to me as if the air between us hadn't changed. She started coming home later too. She said work was keeping her busy. And it made sense, she had a demanding job. But sometimes she'd arrive smelling faintly of cologne I didn't own. I tried to tell myself it could have been from a crowded subway or a coworker passing by, but my brain kept replaying the scent like an unanswered question. Conversations began to feel thinner. We used to talk about everything, but now it was like pulling teeth. I'd ask about her day, and she'd give me short, rehearsed answers, the kind that sound like they've been practiced in front of a mirror. One Saturday, we were supposed to have brunch with my parents. She claimed she wasn't feeling well and stayed home. Later, when I stopped to grab something from the store, I saw her from across the street, in a cafe, laughing with someone I didn't recognize. She didn't see me, and I didn't confront her then. I told myself maybe it was an old friend, maybe a coworker. But deep down, I think I knew better. There's a specific kind of dread that comes from suspecting the person you love is keeping something from you. It's not like sudden heartbreak, it's slower, quieter, like a crack spreading through glass. You don't hear it at first, but you can feel the tension in the air. And I could feel it every time she looked at her phone and smiled at a message that wasn't from me. The thing about suspicion is that once it takes root, it starts looking for proof. Every look, every word, every pause becomes a clue you can't stop analyzing. And I had started collecting them without even meaning to. One night, she fell asleep on the couch, her phone loosely in her hand. I wasn't proud of what I did next, but my gut had been twisting for weeks, and I needed answers. I gently slid the phone from her hand, the screen still unlocked. There they were, messages. Dozens of them. And not from a coworker or a random friend, but from a contact simply saved as Aaron. I didn't have to guess who he was. I knew the name. I'd heard it before, back when we were still dating. Aaron was her ex, the one she had sworn was firmly in her past. The messages weren't explicit, but they didn't need to be. There was an intimacy in the way they talked, inside jokes, casual miss you texts, little references that only people with a history would understand. And the timestamps. Some of them were from late at night, others in the middle of the day when she claimed to be too busy at work to text me back. I scrolled further and saw something that made my chest go cold. A conversation from 2 weeks ago where they were planning to meet for lunch, the exact day she'd told me she was at a work conference. The puzzle pieces that had been floating in my mind suddenly snapped together. The tilted phone, the late nights, the smell of cologne, the cafe across town. For a long minute, I just sat there in the dim light, staring at the screen. My hands were shaking, but not from sadness, from a slow, rising anger that felt almost calm. This wasn't just texting. This was lying. Repeatedly. To my face. When she stirred and started to wake, I set the phone back down and pretended to be half asleep. My heart was pounding so hard I thought she might hear it. She had no idea I knew. And I wasn't going to tell her. Not yet. Because now, I wasn't just a suspicious husband. I was a man with proof. And proof changes everything. From that night on, every smile I gave her, every casual "how was your day?" was an act. I wasn't her clueless husband anymore, I was her shadow, watching, listening, collecting. I didn't confront her right away, not because I was scared, but because I wanted the truth to be undeniable. I wanted every lie she told me to be lined up next to the evidence, so when the moment came, there would be no way out for her. I started paying attention to her schedule. If she said she'd be late from work, I'd check the location tracker we had set up on our phones for safety. Half the time, she wasn't anywhere near her office. Once, she was at a park on the other side of town for almost 2 hours. Another time, at a bar I knew neither of us had been to together. Her social media became a goldmine. Little details in her posts matched the backgrounds of photos Aaron had on his own account. The same coffee cup. The same mural in the background. It was subtle, the kind of thing most people wouldn't notice, but I did. I even changed how I texted her. I'd send short, vague messages during the day, the kind that didn't invite much conversation. It worked. She stopped worrying about hiding her phone around me, and I started seeing her smirk at messages while she thought I wasn't looking. One evening, she told me she was meeting Sarah from work for dinner. Sarah did work with her, so it sounded believable. But I decided to follow her, staying a few cars back. My heart was hammering the entire time. She drove right past the restaurant she'd mentioned and ended up in a quiet part of town. I parked half a block away and watched from my car as she got out, smiling in a way I hadn't seen in months, and walked straight into Aaron's arms. He hugged her like someone who never stopped being hers. I sat there in the dark, gripping the steering wheel so hard my knuckles ached. I could have stormed over right then and there, but that would have given her the advantage, the excuse to twist it, deny it, claim I was overreacting. No. If this was going to end, it was going to end with the truth in the open, in front of everyone she had lied to. That was the night I decided I wasn't just going to confront her. I was going to expose her. Once I made the decision to expose her, every move I made had purpose. This wasn't going to be a messy, screaming match in the middle of the street. No, it was going to be calculated, controlled, and undeniable. The first thing I did was back up everything. Screenshots of their messages. Photos from social media. Location history logs. Even a short video from the night I followed her, grainy, taken from a distance, but clear enough to see her in his arms. I organized it all in a single folder, both on my phone and on a USB drive. I wasn't leaving any room for her to delete or explain away the evidence. The opportunity came sooner than I expected. Her parents had invited us for a small family dinner. It was nothing unusual, we visited them every few weeks. But this time, I saw it differently. A dinner meant everyone would be there. Her parents, her sister, maybe even her cousin who always looked at me like I was lucky to have Emily. Perfect. 4 days leading up to it, I acted like nothing had changed. I asked about her day. I kissed her goodbye in the mornings. I even brought her coffee one afternoon like I used to. If she noticed anything different in my behavior, she didn't show it. But behind the scenes, I was setting the stage. I borrowed a small projector from a friend, one you could connect to a phone or USB. I told her parents I had a little surprise to share after dinner, something fun, I said, maybe a video from our honeymoon. They were delighted. The night before the dinner, I checked and rechecked everything. Evidence neatly organized. Projector working perfectly. Backup copies of the files, just in case. I barely slept, my mind running through every possible reaction she might have, the denials, the tears, the anger. But the truth was, I wasn't doing this for her. I wasn't even doing it for me. I was doing it so her family, the people who thought I was lucky to have her, would finally see the kind of person she really was. The only thing left now was to walk into that dinner, smile, and wait for the right moment to push play. The evening of the dinner, I dressed like I always did for visits to her parents, neat but casual. No one would see a trace of the storm brewing under the surface. When Emily came out of the bedroom, wearing that smile she reserved for public appearances, I realized she truly had no idea what was coming. The drive to her parents' house felt longer than usual. She chatted about work, about some sale she wanted to check out this weekend, about how she was craving her mom's roast chicken. I nodded, gave short replies, letting her believe everything was normal. Inside, my mind was counting down to the moment everything would flip. When we arrived, her parents welcomed us warmly, her mother hugging me like I was her own son. That part hurt more than I expected. These people had treated me like family from the start. They deserved to know the truth, even if it shattered the image they had of their daughter. Dinner was ordinary. Laughter at her father's corny jokes. Compliments on the food. Her sister telling a funny story about her new job. I played along, smiled when expected, asked questions at the right moments. Every once in a while, Emily would glance at me with this content look, the kind that said she thought everything between us was fine. The projector sat quietly in my bag in the corner of the room. Knowing it was there made my pulse quicken. I could almost feel its weight pressing on me, a reminder of what was about to happen. When dessert was served, her father leaned back in his chair, patting his stomach, and that was my cue. I smiled and said I had a little something to share before we left. Emily looked curious but not worried. She probably thought it was a photo slideshow from our honeymoon or some funny video I'd found online. Her mom was already dimming the lights as I walked over to set up the projector. My hands were steady, but my chest felt tight, not from nerves, but from anticipation. Years from now, this moment would be crystal clear in my memory. Emily still had no idea. She sat there sipping coffee, legs crossed, one hand resting casually on the armrest, completely unaware that the next few minutes would tear down every lie she had built. The room was dim now, the hum of the projector filling the silence. Emily leaned back in her chair, still wearing that easy smile, completely convinced this was going to be some lighthearted surprise. I clicked to the first image. It wasn't our honeymoon. It was a screenshot of her text messages with Aaron, her ex. The room stayed silent for a moment, like everyone's brains were trying to catch up to what they were seeing. Then I advanced to the next slide, more messages. Flirty, familiar, full of inside jokes that made it clear they weren't just catching up. The timestamps told their own story. Late nights, early mornings, the kind of contact you don't have with someone you've supposedly left behind. Emily froze. Her smile vanished, replaced by a tight, pale look. Her mother glanced at her, confused, then back at the screen. I kept going. Photos from social media, hers and Aaron's, where the backgrounds matched. That same mural. The same coffee shop. The same rain-slick street corner. Then the location logs, showing where she had been when she told me she was working late or out with friends. And finally, the short, grainy video. Her, in Aaron's arms at that quiet bar across town. The silence in the room turned heavy, like all the oxygen had been sucked out. Her father's face went hard, her mother's eyes were wide with shock, and her sister just stared at her like she was seeing her for the first time. Emily finally spoke, her voice sharp, trying to laugh it off, claim it wasn't what it looked like. But the evidence didn't need my commentary, it spoke louder than any denial she could throw out. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't call her names. I simply said I thought her family deserved to know who she really was. And then I shut the projector off. For a few seconds, no one moved. Emily's parents looked shattered. Her mother reached for her but then stopped halfway, as if she didn't know what to say. Emily sat there, trembling slightly, her eyes darting around the room for someone to defend her. But no one did. The silence didn't last forever, it shattered like glass. Her father was the first to speak, his voice low but carrying a weight that made even me sit back. He didn't yell, but there was no mistaking the anger in his tone. Her mother asked her, almost pleading, if it was true. Emily stumbled over her words, reaching for any explanation that might make this look like a misunderstanding. She said they were just friends, that it was innocent, but with every excuse I could see the disbelief deepen in her parents' eyes. Her sister didn't hold back. She asked why Emily would meet up with an ex in secret if there was nothing to hide. No one in that room looked convinced by her answers, not even her. Emily turned to me then, her face tight, eyes glassy. She tried to shift the blame, accusing me of spying and invading her privacy. I didn't bite. I just sat there, calm, letting the weight of the evidence speak for me. Her father finally said he needed some air and walked out onto the porch. Her mother followed a few moments later, shaking her head, the sound of the screen door creaking behind her. Her sister just looked at Emily one last time before getting up and leaving the room entirely. That left the two of us sitting there, the projector still cooling in the corner, the smell of coffee and dessert lingering in the air like nothing had happened, except everything had. She told me I'd humiliated her. I told her I hadn't done anything, she had. All I'd done was turn on a light so everyone could see. For the first time since the night I found those messages, I felt the knot in my chest loosen. I'd carried this truth alone for weeks, and now it was out in the open. There was no going back. She sat there with her arms crossed, staring at the floor, and I realized something important. This wasn't a woman who felt remorse. This was someone who felt caught. And that was all I needed to know. After that night, the air between us was poisoned. There was no yelling, no dramatic fights, just a cold, heavy silence that followed us everywhere. She moved around the apartment like a ghost, avoiding eye contact, speaking only when she had to. I kept replaying everything in my head, the lies, the secret meetings, the late-night messages. The way she tried to twist it back on me instead of owning what she'd done. I wasn't angry anymore. Anger had burned out. What was left was clarity. One evening, a few days later, she came into the living room and tried to talk. Not to apologize, but to move past it. She said everyone makes mistakes, that the important thing was to focus on the future. But there was no future I could picture with her anymore, not one where I could look at her and believe a single word she said. I told her I was done. Calm, steady, no raised voice. I wasn't asking for her understanding, and I wasn't giving her another chance to rewrite the story. I was simply ending it. She cried then, but the tears felt like they belonged to someone who was losing comfort, not love. I packed my things that night. Not everything, just what I needed. Clothes, essentials, my work laptop. The rest could wait. When I walked out, I didn't look back. I didn't slam the door. I just closed it quietly behind me, like you do when you know you'll never be opening it again. It was strange. I'd imagined this moment would feel like defeat, like I was losing something. But instead, I felt lighter. For the first time in weeks, I could breathe without the weight of her lies pressing on my chest. She had made her choices. Now I was making mine. Walking away from that marriage wasn't the hardest thing I've ever done, it was the clearest. The moment I closed that door, I understood something I'd been blind to for months. Trust isn't something you repair with a quick apology, and loyalty isn't proven in words. It's proven in actions, especially when no one's watching. Emily had her chances, more than she deserved. She could have been honest when the first message was sent. She could have told me the truth before I had to find it on my own. But she chose lies. And once someone shows you they're comfortable lying to your face, you can never unknow it. People sometimes ask if I regret exposing her in front of her family. The answer is no. I didn't do it to humiliate her, I did it so the truth couldn't be buried under charm and excuses. I wanted the people closest to her to see her for who she was, not who she pretended to be. The weeks after I left weren't easy. Starting over rarely is. But every day that passed without her in my life was a day I got stronger, clearer, and more certain that I'd made the right choice. If there's one thing I learned, it's this. When someone shows you who they are, believe them the first time. Don't hold on to the version of them you fell in love with if it's not the person standing in front of you anymore. Now I live my life with my eyes open, not in suspicion, but in awareness. I know my worth, and I'll never again let someone convince me to settle for less than honesty, respect, and real loyalty. Sometimes the best revenge isn't shouting, isn't getting even. It's moving on so completely that their chapter in your story becomes nothing more than a footnote. And that's exactly what I've done. Please like this video and subscribe to my channel, thank you.